Hello and welcome to my channel, Lumidouce Gaming, our final baguette enthusiast of our fantastical Fontaine Foray. Emilie is here to send us off. Let's see how great a Constellation 0 Emilie is with various weapons, such as the Favonius Lance. It felt like just 356 days ago since we began our journey through a sea of eclairs and escargot. And what better way to end our croissant connoisseur days than by
setting everything on fire in a sea of hell-fiery burning death.
Introducing Emilie, our favorite pyromaniac burning specialist who popped out of nowhere to spritz her enemies with her infamous designer perfume line. Emilie is a 5-star Dendro off-field DPS character centered around the burning reaction. For this video, I will showcase Emilie with both the free-to-play friendly weapon, the Favonius Lance, and her signature weapon, the Lumidouce Elegy. Why these weapons? Well, a certain missive wind spear went missing, the Black Cliff polearm has gone dark, and we're so royally screwed that there isn't even a royal spear. Let's just say this was a missed opportunity. To compensate for this lack of a proper 4-star DPS polearm to showcase, I'll also provide a weapon chart at a few points in this video. She's using the 4-piece unfinished Reverie for artifacts, and of course she's at Constellation 0, and her talents are at 9, 9, and 9. Let's start with the most malodorous part of her kit, her basic attacks Shadow Hunting Spear custom. As we can see, her basic attacks are dealing negligible damage. Moving on, we have her elemental skill, Fragrance Extraction. Let's see how it does when there is no burning involved. Yeah, surely this isn't all Emilie can offer. Let's heat things up a bit by having our Registfine friend start with just a bit of pyro on it. With just her elemental skill, Emilie went from basically doing negligible damage without burning to single cycling our Registfine friend if burning is involved. Burning is nice because it self-refreshes the pyro application. Burning causes these little squigglies, aka scents, to drop, which her lantern absorbs. After absorbing 2 scents, the lantern upgrades itself to a level 2 lantern, which deals way more damage than a level 1 lantern. Not only that, but every 2 additional scents absorbed by a level 2 lantern shoots a Clear Dew Cologne, aka Dendro Orbital Strikes, which deal a chonky 600% damage multiplier. As we can see, her lantern deals a ton of damage if burning is involved. Let's spritz through some additional scents of her elemental skill. The lantern performs 1 attack cycle every 1.5 seconds and applies Dendro 1 time to a single target every other attack cycle. It also generates a Dendro particle every other attack cycle, and you can generate a scent every 2 seconds when burning is triggered. It does take a while for her lantern to ramp up to level 2 and to start dishing out Dendro Orbital Strikes. The lantern has a long 22-second duration with a 14-second cooldown. Unfortunately though, using her skill to reposition or refresh her lantern resets it back to a level 1 lantern, which we want to avoid. Finally, her passive 1's orbital strikes don't count as skill damage, thus discouraging the use of certain artifact sets like the Golden True. Anyway, this is the perfect smelly segue to talk about her elemental burst, Aromatic Explication. Emilie's elemental burst causes smelly scented dews to shower on surrounding scoundrels. targeting them at random 1 scoundrel every 3 shots, thus dealing maximum damage against grouped up enemies. Arguably just as important as the damage it does, it also stores the state of the lantern that was on field and refreshes its duration after her burst ends. Alternatively, it will just place down a level 1 lantern at the end of the burst if there was no lantern beforehand. In other words, you want to use her burst to reposition and refresh the duration of her level 2 lanterns. As an added bonus, the scents generated are not absorbed during her burst, so that way they will be absorbed right after her burst ends, causing a fast transformation to a level 2 lantern or multiple dendro orbital strikes in quick succession. Emilie's second passive increases the damage she deals to burning targets based on her attack stat, with 1000 attack increasing damage by 15%. At 2400 attack, she reaches the 36% bonus damage cap. This damage bonus increases all of her damage, including her burst, orbital strikes, and skill damage, and even her basic attack damage. And finally, her last passive reduces the damage you take from burning, which is nice since you don't want to be cooking yourself. Since her solo damage output, even with the Favonius Lance, is already able to single cycle our Regisfine friend, let's try helping our robot chicken smell a bit better with Emilie's perfume. Yeah, she was able to take out our robot chicken friend in a very reasonable amount of time, even with the Favonius Lance. However, let's next take a look at her full kit with her signature weapon, the Lumidouce Elegy. Yep, that's a 51% increase to her orbital strike crit damage. And overall, this weapon deals around 59% more damage than the Favonius Lance after factoring in the additional crit rate. And unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we don't have the Missive Wind Spear to showcase today. Regardless, Emilie's signature weapon is still a colossal 34% upgrade to even her overall best free-to-play friendly polearm, the missing Missive Wind Spear. So yeah, there's that to keep in mind. Now let's take a look at her performance in a team setting. Starting with this free-to-play friendly-ish Burning Perfume team. This team's damage is quite reasonable, and funnily enough, we can give Emilie a lot of field time here. This free-to-play friendly team is a fun combination of burning and pyro damage, where Emilie benefits from Bennett's massive attack buff. Another interesting team is a Hyper Emilie team. Sadly, due to technical difficulties, we've also lost that certain exciting story about murdering dragons, so I cooked up this goofy Hyper Emilie team with a Deepwood Kooky, who also triggers Overloaded for Chevreuse to provide her attack buff to Emilie. And with her signature weapon, which skyrockets her personal damage output, it's quite worth it to buff her damage even more with all these buffs, with some of her orbital strikes able to reach over 100,000 damage. Keep in mind that this goofy main DPS Emilie is much less worth it with a free-to-play weapon like the Favonius Lance. Another team I liked a lot is this Furina team. Yes, this Furina happens to also be at Constellation 6, so do keep that in mind. Still, this variation allows Furina to forward vape occasionally, while also obviously increasing the damage that everyone does on the team. Now, this showcase isn't very accurate in terms of free-to-play friendly performance, but I do believe it to be a somewhat viable team. One issue I have with this though is that sometimes it will be difficult to apply burning onto the enemy due to Furina's Hydro application. The next team is purely a proof of concept showcase, but it's this Arlecchino team. Yes, Arlecchino is using the 2-star polearm because she's also at constellation 6. Anyway, a pyro main DPS character is quite viable with Emilie, although I would argue that vaping with Yelan or even having someone else like Xiangling is equally viable in this slot. Still, you can still shoehorn Emilie into this team, but it's more of a pyro carry team than an Emilie team. Another usable team is a reverse melt team with a character like Wriothesley. Wriothesley is able to pummel the enemy, and thanks to the additional pyro application from Xiangling as well as burning, he's able to reliably melt his damage without interfering with Emilie's damage output. Now do keep in mind that this Wriothesley is also at constellation 6, so even with this whatever 1-star weapon or something that I'm using, his damage output is still likely very inflated. I also tried Aggravate while I was at it, and out of all the teams I tried, this was my personal least favorite. Burning uptime is poor to say the least, and personally I think a traditional Aggravate team with Nahida instead just feels so much better. Still, Emilie does apply Dendro and thus can be used on such a team, and she has multi-wave Dendro application without needing to be swapped on, unlike Nahida. But shoehorning in a pyro character just to make Emilie do some damage feels weird. So let's move on to my thoughts on Emilie. Why is there no Abyss footage? Well, let's just say due to technical difficulties. The Abyss was lost to the Abyss. So the best I can do is showcase this team versus the Golem without taking out the Golem shield, thus making the Golem have an effective HP pool of around 2.2 million hit points, and yes, I'm not using the Deepwood Memories or the Viridescent Veneer. It took this free-to-play friendly team around 60 seconds to take out this Golem with about 2 million hit points, which puts this team in a reasonable position to 9-star most Abyss 12 floors. And this team also deals very solid AoE damage thanks to Emilie's AoE on parts of her kit as well as Xiangling. So despite the lack of Abyss testing, I'm still feeling pretty comfortable with my takeaways to share them with you. Emilie is a very solid Dendro sub-DPS character who deals great damage while off-field. However, currently she doesn't have a complete team. Every team she's in right now just feels weird, as if it's missing a proper on-field DPS character that was designed to work with burning. As such, I fully expect Emilie to improve in the future, especially if you're willing to pull for her complete team. Emilie definitely has some weaknesses though. Against enemies that can't be burninged, she is basically completely useless as a character. With her current teams, she can also have some energy issues, since it's highly recommended to use her elemental burst to reposition and to refresh her lantern once every 20 seconds or so. Speaking of energy issues and speaking of better teams for her in the future, if she gets a proper Dendro teammate, she'll be able to run more free-to-play friendly weapons like the Missive Wind Spear much more comfortably without having some serious energy issues. Another kind of funny weakness that she has is that her current team struggle to find a good Deepwood user for her. So yeah, any showcase of Emilie now isn't going to be reflective of her long-term potential due to her not having a proper team at the moment, and let's not even talk about the lack of Abyss. And finally, Emilie is no different from her fellow French beret aficionados with extremely impactful early constellations. All in all, Emilie is a perfectly solid sub-DPS burning Dendro character that I expect to get even better in the future. And if you like what you see here and plan to pull for future teammates for her, then Emilie is a reasonable choice. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.